Hello number ones, welcome back to my channel. This is the Metatron speaking, and 20 historical myths you still believe. Or are they? I don't know. We are on History Snob and I haven't checked them yet, but I mean it's a snob, so I'm expecting pedantry. Please don't disappoint. How many do you believe? It turns out the modern era isn't the only one filled with misinformation. Plenty of historical facts are actually little more than exaggerations and lies, and in this list we go over the 20 most notorious myths people still believe. Well, let's see what we've got. Is it a nonsense list? I mean, I prefer those because they make for better content. But maybe it's a really good one and we get to debunk a few myths. Fantastic, let's go. Number 1. Napoleon was short. Many people think Napoleon was short, which he might arguably be compared to modern times. However, in his time, Napoleon was of average height, standing at 5'2". To be fair, for what I remember, the averages in France, because, I mean, in Britain they would be higher, for instance, but in France, I would say 5'4" to 5'6", so I do think he's still short, even in period. And also do keep in mind that it's an average we're talking about. The height of a person has to do with nutrition, of course, so the social class plays a role and all of that. 2. Medieval flat earth. Let's go! Many people wrongly think that those living in the medieval times thought the earth was flat. In fact, Galileo wasn't even persecuted by the church for suggesting the earth was round, as the church had already accepted this. What actually got Galileo in trouble was saying that the earth wasn't the center of the universe. Okay, yeah. Good, yeah. I would say, first and foremost, the church and nobility, the upper class, yeah, they knew the church was round because they could read the classics. Okay, this is the educated elites. And we can see this because whenever we see representations of the earth, particularly when it's in statuary, so that it's actually 3D, if you will. And so you have a statue of a king, an emperor, a bishop, and you see that they're holding objects, and these represent a certain type of symbolism. And whenever you see an object that represents the earth, it's always a sphere. So not only this was known by the elites, but in general, even the general public that was hanging around this type of iconography would have known, well, that's the earth, because he's the emperor of the earth, or he's the king of whatever the heck. And so I would say that in the general public, at least in educated, near educated centers, most people would have that image in their mind. And then for the majority of the populace, I don't think they even thought about it. Like, I honestly don't think they did. Like, if you went to a farmer in rural, whatever the heck, France, and you asked them, do you believe the earth was flat? He'd probably be like, what? Quoi? Bonjour? No, he's just thinking what the heck he's gonna plant. Gladiator fights, oh my gosh. Yeah, good choice. It turns out gladiators were never supposed to fight until the ultimately end. After all, if they did that, Rome would run out of gladiators pretty quickly. That is correct. Essentially, the sport was more akin to boxing, where some fights were even predetermined, and it was the gladiator's job to make it look good. Okay, well, the predetermined thing would have been rare. We shouldn't think that. And also, I personally, I'm nitpicking here. It's good that they are debunking the idea of gladiators dying all the time, because that's nonsense. I'll tell you a little bit about what the sources tell us in terms of death to fight ratios, because we do have some examples. But anyways, I wouldn't say it's akin to boxing. I would say it's akin to MMA, with some wrestling in the sense of the spectacle of it. But it's still hardcore, like they still fight. The Romans wanted to see the fight. What are the death ratios? Generally speaking, it depends. Between the Republic and the Empire, as far as we understand, there's a difference. In the Republic, it was more dangerous to be a gladiator, but in the Empire, as it becomes a profession, then the mortality rates diminish. So, for general gladiators, 1 in 5 would be a percentage, so 20% of gladiators would die sometime at some point during their career. That's the idea. Doesn't mean that they die every fight, of course. You could have entire fights with no one where no one died, and then you could have fights where someone hit that 20%. When you go into the imperial period, it's halved, so 1 in 10 or 10% eventually at some point in their career could die. This is further reduced to 1 in 20, so 5% if we're talking about highly trained gladiators, because those were more precious, if you will, more valuable. So they got better care in terms of medicine as well. Alright, number one. So all of that information was impressive, but you know what else is impressive? The kind sponsor that made this video possible. CyberGhost VPN. If you have ever hesitated to connect to a public Wi-Fi, whether it be at a cafe, hotel or an airport, because you're afraid that someone might snoop on, well then I've got good news for you. CyberGhost VPN is here to protect your data. CyberGhost VPN is one of the most trusted VPN services out there, and it keeps your personal information safe by encrypting everything you do online. CyberGhost VPN is a fantastic choice because it's one of the best products on the market with over 38 million users and fantastic reviews on Trustpilot. That is fantastic. But what is a VPN really? Well, these days your internet provider, websites you visit, or even shady Wi-Fi networks can track what you're doing online. But with CyberGhost VPN, your IP is hidden and your connection is fully encrypted, which means no tracking, no spying, peace of mind. Another awesome feature is the fact that you can also use up to 7 devices at once. So for instance, your phone, laptop, tablet, even your family devices can all stay protected. Furthermore, if you enjoy watching all sorts of shows on streaming websites, whether it be Netflix or Amazon Prime, and you don't like being limited to the sort of availability in your country, then CyberGhost VPN can help you with that. In fact, it can unlock content that is region-specific. Just change your virtual location and you can have access to the catalog you want. And the best part is that CyberGhost VPN offers a 45 days money-back guarantee. And on top of that, here is the special offer of the day. You can get 83% off plus 4 extra months for free by clicking the link in the description below. So if you care about your privacy and you want to access as much content as possible, click the link in the description below. And massive thanks to CyberGhost VPN for sponsoring my video. 4. The lifespan lie. Turns out many people believe that people in the past rarely lived past 30. Yeah, people do believe that. And that nowadays people live twice as long as on average. Well, to be honest, on average, we don't live 60. The average is higher than that, mate, for today. Anyways, whatever. In reality, it wasn't uncommon for people to live past 100. It was just a matter of life expectancy. Okay, so I appreciate the effort. What I don't appreciate, by the way, is that this is not a picture of a gladiator, but whatever. I do appreciate the effort, but I would like to kind of touch it up a little bit. It wasn't uncommon for people to live past 100. Well, it did happen. How common it was enormously depends. It's still rare even today, if you think about it. So if you're gonna be pedantic, still rare. But yeah, people did do it. What wasn't uncommon was to reach past your 70s, that's correct. Both in classical antiquity, in the medieval period. In fact, it kind of gets worse with the industrialization and the industrial age, because people kind of flock into cities and urban centers become prone to sickness and diseases, and so the sanitation gets worse. So that does happen to have an impact on both general health, which of course connects to your life expectancy, as they say here, and then up to a certain extent it might also have to do with general height. But regardless, what I would like to say, instead of saying that it's a matter of life expectancy, once again, it's a situation where people misunderstand what an average is. And averages are built on all humans in that specific area, in that specific time period, which includes from child to elderly person. So if you have a higher rate of infant mortality, which you did, then that's going to skew your average life expectancy. But even if life expectancy was 30, it's 30. Even if it is this one, if we find a location where it is this, 30 doesn't mean that everyone is dying at 30, exception being some like really old man who dies at 45. No, it means that because there are a lot of children that unfortunately die in the early stages, that's what skews it. But as long as you survive your childhood, then there is a very high chance that now you're gonna live up until your 70s. 5. Albert Einstein dropped out. I never heard of that one. People believe that Albert Einstein was a mediocre student, really, and even had failing grades, but in actuality he was as smart as a kid as he was an adult, and his student papers were highly insightful. Yeah, and now that I think about it, I did remember someone saying that he failed maths. I mean, 6. White ancient statues. It's easy to look at the current Greek and Roman sculptures and assume they were always white. After all, white was a color that often correlated to purity. Technically, white isn't. I'll stop the pedantry. However, ancient artists actually painted their statues. They're absolutely right. But the Renaissance artists that reconstructed them preferred simple white. Beautifully put, concise, correct, I appreciate that. Yes, when we see a David by Michelangelo, yeah, that statue is originally fully white, as a lot of the statues in the Renaissance were. However, classical antiquity in the Mediterranean, both ancient Greece and ancient Rome, and in fact even Egypt, all of that area, they had the characteristics of painting their statues in full color, so polychromy. In ancient architecture, wall painting, statuary is omnipresent in this period of classical antiquity. So yes, statues were absolutely in full color. Medieval people never bathed. That's another one. This is another common misconception, and it turns out people in medieval times were frequent bathers. In fact, it was expected that people be clean before going to church on Sundays. Yeah, that's correct. And they used the rivers and lakes when they didn't have access to bathhouses, which some did. So if you had bathhouses, you go there. Of course, you would have the occasional person who never bathed, but you have them today as well. Armor mobility, I like this one. When you look at a knight wearing his heavy metal armor, it might be easy to assume he won't be moving much under all that bulky metal. But in actuality, knights had plenty of mobility as the weight was evenly distributed across their body, and the linkings allowed for a full range of movement. That's correct. I never heard anyone refer to it as linkings, but yeah, that's excellent. They're correct, and I'm glad that they didn't overcorrect it, which is something that happens. Because, of course, before, we used to think, and you would hear, oh yeah, knights can't get up if they fall, they can't get on a horse, they can't move, they can barely fight. It was nonsense, obviously. But then I've noticed people that kind of pushed it too far away, trying to debunk this myth, and they said, oh, knight armor weighs nothing. And no, I mean, wearing plate armor still has its weight. But as they are correctly saying here, it is evenly distributed across the body, which means a lot of the armor, for example, the chest plate, the breastplate, backplate, fold, and tassets, because of the way the armor is built with a tight waist, a lot of the weight will be at your natural waist, a bit like with a tracking or like a backpack, if you will, for tracking. And when the shoulders are kind of a separate thing. They are pointed though, so arms and legs, you don't feel them at all. Because they're pointed, which means they have these points, which are basically little ropes. I can't think of the word, but anyways, threads that you can use to connect the arms so that they're suspended, right? So you don't feel them at all. I could wear my full plate arms all day. I wouldn't even notice a difference. And I wouldn't even get sore muscles. Shoulders, it depends on the model, because sometimes pauldrons can be intense. Even though they are suspended as well, they are connected, the weight is still on the shoulders. But there are options to diminish that, as there are a lot of possible setups. 9. Let them eat cake. Marie Antoinette gets quite a bad reputation for responding to angry French revolutionaries with let them eat cake, but in reality she never said that. Okay, I don't know anything about this one, so I can't really double check it. Let me know if you know that. 10. Horn helmets. Oh yeah. Current TV shows and movies may lead you to believe that Vikings wore horned helmets. After all, that was what the original Thor wore in the comic books. But in reality, no Viking helmet has been unearthed with horns. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, if you watch Vikings, you might not think that the Norse were wearing horned helmets, but you will end up thinking they were wearing freaking burgonets of the 16th century with an 8th century space. Almost 1,000 years old, newer technology. But apart from the idiocy, yes, so yeah, the idea of horned helmets used in battle by the Norse is nonsense, but horned helmets aren't nonsense. They exist, but in like Mycenaeans traditions, they're made of bronze, they do have horns, they look awesome. Probably 900 BC, just to give you an idea, and possibly even earlier than that. The War of the Worlds. You might have heard the story about how when H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds novel was broadcasted. I thought broadcast is already the past and the present. Maybe I'm just wrong, who knows. On the radio, people thought it was real, leading to panic. But in reality, there were only 2 incidents of this, and local papers capitalized on it as an attempt to discredit radios. Ooh, that's kind of funny, though. I didn't know that. It's kind of true then. I mean, I understand only 2 people and not the wide population. Kind of sounds a little bit like people saying that everyone in the year 1000, when the year 999, everyone thought it was the end of the world, and that's not true. Some people did say it. There were a couple of preachers that were saying, but generally speaking, no one did believe it. The majority of medieval people just went about a normal day. No one went to bed on year 999 and woke up on year 1000 ready to die. It was not a thing. It's not mentioned anywhere in medieval. Mickey Mouse. Turns out Walt Disney was not the one who invented Mickey. Seriously. But he certainly took credit after hiring Uwerks to transform Oswald the Lucky Rabbit into a mouse variant. Okay. Well, to be fair, it's not like whenever I think of Walt Disney, I always thought of the company. I understand that it's based on the man, but I always thought that the drawings were artists he paid for the majority of it. Maybe I'm wrong. It's not like I'm very well versed, and I'm not a huge fan of modern day Walt Disney anyways. Quick draw duels. No, come on. Western movies might have you thinking it was all too common for fiery fights to break out in the American West, but in reality, these events were quite limited. Okay, and the infamous quick draw duels only occurred twice in the region. Okay, fine. Okay, so at least they're not, I don't know about cowboy history, I'll be honest with you. So take this with a pinch of salt. I haven't double checked it. But as long as they tell me that it did happen occasionally, because I think that's pretty cool. Although then again, why do I think it's cool? Well, because pistol duels are a thing even earlier, even before that. I think it's a carryover from European customs. The Salem witch trials. The Salem witch trials certainly did happen and are an example of subjugation and torment women faced at the time. Not only women. However, the whole burning at the stake thing is false. Instead, the women were dispatched in a more traditional means. Still pretty horrible, though. Well, yeah, the burning at the stake happens with the Inquisition, but a lot of that happens post-medieval. It's an early modern period thing. Sir Isaac and the Apple. Sir Isaac Newton is credited for discovering gravity, and while this discovery did involve an apple falling from a tree, it didn't fall on his head, but instead simply in his family's garden. Of course, certain stories are far better at capturing the world's imagination. So yeah, I've only recently heard this one, but people told me that they did hear this idea of, oh, the apple fell on his head. The way I was told, even as a child, is that he saw an apple fall from a tree. And then that gave him the insight, if you will. But I know that this happens. People have confirmed it, the myth. Victorian prudishness. It's often believed that the Victorian era was marked with puritanical prudishness. Goodness gracious, say that 10 times in a row. But this isn't exactly the case. However, it wasn't as bad as the paintings might lead you to believe. I'm not sure what you're doing here. So you're telling me they still are like that, but not as bad. Vincent van... So I would say... I know in English you say Van Gogh. In Italian we say Van Gogh. I think it's like Van Gogh, but you'll tell me if you are Dutch. One of the most famous stories about painter Vincent van Gogh went gone involves his ear, but it turns out it wasn't as bad as media would lead you to believe. Oh, it's funny that they're putting it this way. The media wants you to believe it cut his freaking ear off, but in reality, I'm not sure about the political pressure of Van Gogh's ear, to be honest. Instead of removing the whole ear, he actually removed only a small bit. Still, it's pretty bad. Yeah, he still mutilated himself, but sure, I appreciate the correction. Thank you. Jesus' birthday. Hey, put the best for last. While many associate Christmas with Jesus' birthday, how many people believe that, though? Anyways, the reality is that there is no historical evidence to support this theory. No, it's not that there is no historical evidence. We know for a fact that Christmas has nothing whatsoever to do with, it's just it's a commemoration. We use it as an excuse as Christians. We use it as an excuse to think about God, but it's not a matter of anyone believes that Jesus was born on the 25th of December. We know for a fact he wasn't, because that date was chosen from the ancient Romans as a way to make it more palatable to pagans that were already using that for the divinity, the solus invictus, the sun that comes up, and so they connected it that way. We know for a fact that any other day but the 25th of December is more probable for Jesus' birth. The truth is, we don't actually know when he was born, of course, so even the year we don't know. My guess, having looked at this deeply, tried to figure it out, my guess is that he was born in April. That's what I think. Having looked at a lot of Roman census, I think it would make sense that he would be born between 2 BC and 6 BC. My money is on 4 BC. That's just a guess. April 4 BC. No idea about the day. Okay, well, that wasn't bad. I've seen much worse, much worse. This is actually pretty good. I liked it. Thank you, what is it called? History Snob. Thank you, History Snob, for being pedantic. Appreciate that. And just change that freaking picture of a gladiator, please. Alright, noble ones, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please remember thumbs up, and if you're not yet a member of this community, become a noble one. Subscribe to my channel for more content from the Metatron, and also do not forget about the amazing offer CyberGhost VPN has for you. Click the link in the description, and thank you very much for watching. Bye.